I just finished watching Season 1, Episode 3 of Manifest, and I want to talk about it. So, if you have not seen Episode 3 or any episode of so far, I would suggest you go watch those before you watch these videos, because there's going to be spoilers. So, spoiler warning, you've been warned. Now let's get into it. Episode 3 of Manifest pretty much picked up right where Episode 2 left off, with Episode 2 ending with the murder of one of the passengers. This episode kind of began with the other passengers learning this and kind of wondering, am I next? Ben and Michaela took it upon themselves to go to the crime scene and ask some questions and try to figure out if this was just some random act of violence or was this actually something to do with her being a passenger. Not long after they showed up, though, the NSA showed up and pretty much took over the crime scene and kicked them out. The main agent, he's the director of NSA. His name is Director Vance. He, after seeing them there, obviously it raised a lot of suspicion, I think, for them, considering Michaela was way out of her jurisdiction when it came to the crime scene. So he knew they intentionally came there specifically to see what was going on, and that was suspicious to him, I'm sure. Later on, he started putting a lot of pressure on Michaela, like at her job. He came to her work and started talking to Jared and stuff like that, trying to get information about her. So it's obvious that the NSA is still very much so there, even if you don't really see them, which we learned with the passenger that was murdered. It was actually believed that it was possible that she was being spied on by the NSA. There were black vans and stuff like that sitting outside the house. There were possibilities that her house was bugged. Of course, this kind of freaked Ben out a little bit. He started searching all around his house, thinking maybe he was bugged too. That kind of paranoia, which I think anybody would feel in a situation like that, kind of started to seep into him. He also was dealing with a lot of stuff with his wife, trying to get over the fact and kind of move on that she was with somebody else while he was gone, and that she may actually have been in love with this person and may still be in love with them. Saanvi, the other passenger that was on the plane, who actually ended up kind of inventing a cure, being a big part of inventing a cure for Cal's type of cancer, started looking more into the science side of possibly what happened to them while they were gone. And she actually found something. I think it was a protein that was not there before, and then eventually they found out that all of them had this protein, or at least herself and Cal, so it's suspected that the rest of them have it as well. Later on in the episode, she learned that this was because of a possibility that the protein is present in them because they were somehow brought to the brink or right at the end of death and somehow brought back, and that's why it's kind of like still within them, that kind of like a residual effect of them possibly being almost dead to not quite being alive anymore. So that kind of brings up the question, maybe these past 5.5 years they've just been in some kind of purgatory situation, not alive or dead, but just kind of in some kind of in-between, I guess you could say. While all this was going on, Michaela continued to investigate the crime committed against the murder of the passenger, trying to figure out the culprit. While doing this, she was also dealing with an issue of her own from way before the plane, where it seems she was driving and a friend of hers actually died in a car accident. They were out having some fun, and the friend was a little too drunk to drive, but obviously she was a little bit too. She actually said that she was cleared, so I guess she wasn't technically drunk, at least by the legal limit standards, but she was probably slightly impaired, and that's probably why she blames herself so much for it. This actually led Michaela to try to make amends in a way to to her friend's parents. She realized that the friend's mother actually had dementia and didn't even hardly remember anything about the daughter, which just made her feel even worse. And eventually it led her going back to the family again, trying one more time to make amends, and the mother was actually missing. While looking for her, she kind of swerved in front of a car to try to stop it from hitting the woman. She was in the middle of the road, and then she realized that the person in that car was actually the maid, turns out that while the wife was gone, he was they weren't having an affair or anything like that, but she kind of took it as they were in a relationship. So when the wife came back, it kind of just felt like to her that she was coming back in and treating her like nothing had changed from the time she was gone. She was just the maid, which in reality I guess she really was, but she didn't see it that way. She felt like the husband needed her more than the wife. Of course, it ended up turning out that the husband was super shady. He was a slumlord, and so he was obviously arrested for that. I did think it was really cool the way they kind of tied it in again, just like they've done so far with all the other ones. They really tie it in quite well in this show, all the different intersecting stories. And it's interesting because if she would have never tried to make amends, she would have never went back to that house that night and tried to go look and then get over fear of driving and go out and look for the mother and then find the actual culprit, because the lady that was murdered, was wearing a very expensive necklace, and that necklace was sitting right in the passenger seat of the maid in plain view. I mean, it really is kind of crazy. If you were in any other circumstance, it would be just considered the biggest coincidence on the planet. And that's kind of how her ex-fiance kind of looked at it as well. Jared, he was kind of asking her, what in the world is going on? Okay, once I'll give you the kidnapping, I'll give you that one, but again, something's going on here. What is going on? Nobody is this lucky. She kind of just told him that she felt like she was different, but she couldn't really explain any more than that. Earlier, he was actually approached by the NSA director to kind of pass him information about Michaela. He eventually ripped up the card in the end. There were a few other minor things in the episode. Cal saw his best friend again, who is now aged 5.5 years and is actually dating his sister. So that brought on some issues for the two of them, but they kind of worked it out in the end. It seemed like Ben finally did kind of get his relief a little bit whenever, his wife Grace told him that, I love you, I'm with you, I chose to be with you, this other person doesn't matter. But I don't think that's going to be the end of it. It's going to come up again. We still don't really know how long her and this other guy were together. It seemed like they were together for quite some time, and it might have actually been quite serious. So we definitely have not seen the end of that. For the most part, that was the only other minor things that happened. And then you had the very end of the episode, which yet again they kind of dropped this bomb kind of on you right at the end of the episode. I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be a continuous trend. If it is, I'm glad, because I actually really like it. It gives you something to really look forward to in the next episode. And that for this episode wasn't as big as episode 2, but it was basically that the NSA had taken the body of the passenger that was killed. Saanvi decided that she could actually use that passenger like a piece of brain tissue to try to study it a little bit and see and maybe get some more answers about what happened to them. But the NSA had already taken the body and they couldn't even find any information on it at that point. The government obviously wants to know what happened to these people while they were missing for 5.5 years. They want an explanation. So they're obviously going to take this now deceased passenger and dissect her and try to figure out where they were, if they can get any kind of clues. I'm sure they're going to figure out the whole protein thing now and maybe even more than that. So we'll have to see what that possibly leads to. Overall, this episode, I felt like it was good. I do, however, think this was probably the weakest episode so far, in my opinion. The other episodes just seemed to keep my attention a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, the episode was good. I enjoyed it all from beginning to end. It just, you're going to kind of expect it's going to start slowing down a little bit. They're not going to just be able to go full force all the time. They're going to have to slow down a little bit and spread the mystery out. I've been wondering if we're going to get a definitive kind of answer as to where these people have been these past 5.5 years by the end of the season. And to be honest, I really just don't know. Some shows like to drag out the big mystery for a long time, sometimes too long, and others like to kind of get it out right in the first season and give people that answer, and then kind of move forward in there and open up maybe even a bigger mystery, like, oh, maybe the government was involved in this somehow. It's some big government experiment. I hope they don't drag it out so long to the point where it becomes boring and you don't even really care what happened to them anymore. Then again, it could be a show that never really tells you what happened to them. You just have to know that it happened, and there's really no answer for it. It just happened. I don't think that'll be the case for this show. Like I said, though, I did really enjoy this episode. So far, I've very much so enjoyed this series. Of course, there's only been 3 episodes so far, but if it continues on this path, I could see myself watching this show for a very long time. So, did you enjoy tonight's episode? Let me know your favorite part down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content from me, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.